Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we're going to take a look at the post that CA just put up today, and it covers what are the teams working on. So as you know, CA has a bunch of different teams involved on different projects. These are going to be stated here. So there's the arena team, there's the historical team, and then there's the new content development team, and then plus there's the Warhammer team. So a lot of stuff, and then they also announced a Black Ops task team. We'll cover that at the end of this. But anyways, we'll go through this piece by piece. The first one is Total War Arena. Basically what they state is that on the weekends right now they've been running some closed alpha stage testing for infrastructure and technical issues. And that's all to help them prep for the closed beta that's going to be in development. And so they just overall say stay tuned for more news on the Arena front. No real dates posted here. So I'm eager to see what comes out of Arena. I've played a little bit of it when I went over to visit CA in Horsham. They had stripped down a couple of the elements and kind of retooled certain parts, so I'm eager to see what has changed in large. Anyways, the historical team here, this is kind of a big point for a lot of people. Currently it's still unannounced. We don't know what it's going to be, but they have said that it is now in full production and the game design is locked and asset creation is fully underway. So definitely they've made a decision, they're moving forward, and there's a lot of stuff. They do tout here, for instance, that they have eye-catching combat animations and renderings all over the studio, so I would love to sneak into there and burglarize their studios and get some of those to really know what's coming up next. But so far they haven't released anything. That being said, they do kind of say here that this game retains the strong focus on character design that infused previous major releases. I'm not really sure what to take of that, because in previous games I didn't really think of them that much as having a strong infusion of character design. I'm not sure if they mean more of the gamify elements where you try and tier up certain what would be lords or generals and try and emphasize that. I don't know if that's what they're alluding to, or the fact that they try and focus around historical characters like Attila and make them play dynamic roles. I'm not quite sure, it's pretty vague. But an interesting thing about this historical team update here is they haven't announced a date, and we don't quite know, what's going to come next. They have two parallel teams at the moment, Total War Warhammer and then the historical team, both producing full-scale games. Then there's the the DLC team on the side, but you have these two games moving in parallel. The way we thought it would go, it would be historical fantasy, and they would trade off. So it started with Attila, and then Warhammer 1. But what seems to be indicated is they're going to, instead of going back to historical, it seems like we're going to get an announcement for Total War Warhammer 2 before we even get the historical one announced. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. They haven't really focused or said too much about this. Some people are speculating that this has to do with kind of, it's overdue time that CA would change up their game engine. And that for Warhammer, they wouldn't necessarily change up the Warhammer engine midstream, because right now they have stated that they're going to have all the three different Warhammers sync up together and have a united map that you can play across all of those. And so you wouldn't really want to have different game engines across those. So perhaps what might end up happening is maybe they'll go all three Warhammers before a historical title comes out. So that's just a little bit of speculation. When the historical title does come around, I really do hope that they're going to use this one to kind of launch the new base scaffolding, whatever their new program is going to be that they're going to build their series upon. So what's the current one called? Anyways, I can't remember what the current iteration of their game software is called, but basically it's built upon something that's pretty outdated and that really needs to be updated at this point in time. So hopefully this historical team is working on that. But if they are, it also alludes to the fact that we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. So that's out of the way. The next one is the new content team, so Total War Warhammer DLC and Free DLC. So here it says they got a good reception for Bretonia, which they're really happy about. They say the majority of the dev team is producing DLC and Free DLC for the sequel. So again, talking more and more about Warhammer 2 without anything historical. So that adds to the idea that we'll hear and have a release for Total War Warhammer 2 before we even get the historical one. But anyways, continuing the sentence, there's another interesting thing where they say we're also looking at the further possible content for the current game. So that's really sweet. That's awesome. Given that they said the majority of the dev team has transitioned over, what I imagine this is going to be is not necessarily new campaigns with new factions, because that would be a big overhaul. What I expect them to do is do a lot of Regiments of Renown type stuff, or little Lord packs. Things of that nature, which are pretty easy for a small team to do and that would still add a lot of variety. Some of the things that would beg for a Regiment of Renown would definitely be Bretonia. I mean, they got released and they're very popular, so definitely CA is going to be coming out with a Regiment of Renown for them, as well as other factions fleshing out potentially Midland or some of the other Empire forces. There's a lot to be done in that front. Next here, they talk about the Warhammer team, Total War Warhammer in general. Excitement continues to build as they talk about the second part of the trilogy. Again, more talk about this before history. They're saying particularly as the distinctive races take shape and the playstyle solidifies in campaign and battle. So that doesn't really tell us much. Everything in Warhammer is about having distinct and asymmetrical races, but there is some indication. I think Indie Pride did a lore video where their conclusion, or the most likely thing, was that the new Warhammer title will include, I believe he said it was going to be the Dark Elves, the Lizard Men, Skaven, and kind of go towards the New World type factions, and the Dark Elves across the sea, and of course the High Elves as well. So, you know, potentially this slots in, but this is a pretty vague statement. They say here, we're equally excited at the prospect of sharing details about the game's gigantic scale and content with our community. So that is again going to the statement that they are going to have the games be able to interweave between one another. Presumably that means the campaign maps will be stitched together and that the factions will all be playable with kind of a united game and in a united campaign, and presumably even multiplayer. So that's that. Before we go to the last title, I did want to talk a bit more about Total War Warhammer. If you go to the Total War forums page, they do make an announcement that at EGX Rezzed, at the 31st, which is in 2 weeks from now, that they're going to be showing what's next for the Total War Warhammer series at 4 p.m. on Friday. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It's going to be a long 2 weeks, but again, this is everything revving up for Total War Warhammer 2, not even a drop of information about the historical title. So yeah, this would seem to again confirm that we're going to be having 2 Warhammers back-to-back, and maybe even that we'll have 3 back-to-back. And so if there's 3 back-to-back before they even introduce the historical title, that is a long time to wait for a historical title. Now, caveat to that, this must be the thinking from CA, and the caveat to that, and the kind of key to this problem, is if we go to the bottom here. Take a look at this comment. They announce a Black Ops task team, unannounced Total War title. So what this seems to be is they are conducting investigations to whether they can produce standalone or follow-up DLCs for released games before the next major historical title. And this is really interesting because right here, initial plans are promising, and veteran member from Rome to an Attila, new content teams and form. Okay, so yeah, this is very interesting. This goes to the core of the problem, which is multifaceted. One, Warhammer is doing very well, and they've said that there's going to be a trilogy, and they've also stated that the trilogy is going to be woven together. That means that Warhammer 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much going to have to be built on the same gaming platform. You can't revamp the engine in the same way that they would need to for a historical title. And so presumably what this means is CA is thinking, okay, we're going to revamp kind of the core code for Total War. We're not going to do it for Warhammer, and that's going to happen for the historical title, but if that's going to happen, presumably it's going to have to slot in after Warhammer. I mean, I'm not sure how the parallel teams work, but presumably it would push the historical title to be after the third Warhammer. Again, this is speculation. If that's the case, CA has clearly identified right here that they know this is an issue. They know people are itching for historical titles, and it seems like one of the solutions they're proposing here is to come in and do little sporadic historical things. So this is super interesting. Standalone follow-ups. What could that be? Well, I would kind of see it like almost like an Age of Charlemagne type DLC or something like that. Maybe they would even go back and do it for Rome, where you kind of like they would release something like Caesar's, maybe like Caesar's campaigns, or go in and maybe they could do a Spartacus revolt or something interesting like that. Even for Attila, there's a lot of potential for them to come in and focus in on a little bit more of that history, give us more. But if they're going to go down that route, that has me questioning, you know, what's the value of that? Yes, it's history, but it's nothing super fresh. And so I think what they're going to try and do is maybe introduce something that is kind of familiar to Rome to an Attila, but perhaps pushes the timeline a little bit further. Perhaps it's going to be a little bit past the timeline of Attila, because they want to keep it fresh and they want people to give people a reason to go back to history. So imagine this. Imagine they announce, hey, your full-scale historical title is not going to come out until the end of Warhammer. That's going to be another at least 2-3 years. No historical title until 2 or 3 years. But, and then you imagine that's the news announcement, and they say, but now you're going to be able to revisit the world of Rome 2. That's not going to generate any excitement. So I do imagine that if they're going to pursue the standalone follow-up, it's going to be something that's perhaps similar to those time periods, but has enough newness, a new twist, in order to get people excited and interested. So perhaps they'll push it to the Renaissance. Perhaps they'll do something that gets into the medieval period, or maybe they'll try even something a different part of the world, maybe revisit Japan or whatnot. But yeah, this is really interesting. I haven't seen too many people talk about this dynamic here, but yeah, this is definitely something to keep an eye out on. So I would love to hear your opinions, what you think about this Black Ops team, what their potential, what they could potentially do with these standalones. This is very, very intriguing, and perhaps what they could do is even to keep the community interested. This is actually really interesting. Maybe what they could do is come back in and introduce mod tools. Holy crap, what if they went in and they said, you know, as part of this new DLC, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the mod tools for Attila or Rome 2, give you an awesome battle map editor to the effect of Warhammer. They've already tested it. It's doing really well with Warhammer. What if they went ahead and just did that, opened that up for Rome 2 or Attila? That would be phenomenal. That would refresh these genres, open up, and it would make it a very cheap way for CA to revive interest and kind of outsource, again, work to the community with low effort. So I think that would be great. So yeah, a lot of potential discussion could be had over this. That's it for my speculation and my coverage of this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave your comments below about what you think of, you know, all this news, but in particular, I'm really curious what you guys think about the potential for doing a standalone follow-up or DLC for existing series. So yeah, that's it. See you in the next one. Peace out.